Welcome to another BoshNRoll
And ThrabenU.
legacy video. Hey Phil, how's it going?
It's going really well. I'm really happy that we're getting together for this little project today.
Yeah, me too. So what this is some of the members of Phil's Discord and some of the members of my Discord. If you're interested in those communities, by the way, the links are in our video descriptions. They wanted to see us battle each other, and they got together. They pooled for a donation league from each of us to crash into each other here, and I think we have a pretty cool showcase of the legacy format today.
Yeah, so we're going to be playing three matches today. I'll be playing Mad Vine against Ragstill. Round two will feature Red Prison versus Bant. And then round three will feature some fan favorites, Deadguy Ale versus Boros Painter.
Yeah, that one's going to be good. That's the headliner for the day. We're about to get into matchup analysis. We're going to analyze each matchup, talk about each other's list, how we think the matchup's going to go. Then we're going to play each one. That's how the next 3 rounds are going to go. We share the deck tech and matchup analysis part of the video, but if you want to see Phil's side of the matchup, go watch it on ThrabenU. If you're on ThrabenU and you want to see my side, come over to BoshNRoll. We're going to separate the videos for our commentary. We won't have live mics while we're actually playing.
Let's get into it, and why don't we take a look at the first set of decks?
Sounds good to me. Let's talk about this first matchup. I'm on the Ragstill side of things, and this one, if you've had your head above ground for the last month or so in the legacy format, you're familiar with this deck. This is a weird one. This looks like a vintage deck and kind of plays like one too. Just the weird numbers of 2 standstill, 1 true name nemesis. But this is a deck that leans into Modern Horizons 2 and just pressures you with Ragavan, backs it with Daze and Stifle. If you can figure that out, surprise, they're also a standstill deck. If you can figure that out, surprise, here's Urza's Saga. If you can navigate that, here comes True Name Nemesis, and when the dust settles, here's Murktide Regent. And for good measure, Ragavan can dash in at any point along that curve. So this is a weird deck to play. It's a weird deck to build. I'm still marveled that anybody's brain found this, but it's extremely powerful. It's a great deck. It's a huge part of the metagame.
So, Brian, you're telling me that deck with like so many different diverse plans, it looks like it's all over the place, is actually good?
Yes, there is a weird thing that has happened here, and I don't think anyone could have possibly sat down just with a blank drawing board and said, okay, I'm going to put Ragavan, Standstill, True Name Nemesis into the same deck. Let's fill in the blanks. I'm pretty sure this was like, can we play Jeskai Ragavan? Or like now that we're in Jeskai, like what does that get us? Like I want to protect my Ragavan with Daze. Stifle's pretty good. We could put Wasteland in there. Like this looks like a Delver deck, this bottom corner of Wasteland, Stifle, Daze, Ragavan. And then they were like, ooh, Standstill is a good way to back up Ragavan. And then, ooh, what's good with Standstill? Urza Saga. Oh, that's neat. What if they... So I think that this was a thing that happened in steps, and each of these plans slightly overlaps with like 1.5 to 2.5 of the other ones. It's not just a pile of cards. There's a lot of really tight synergy in this pile, and somehow over steps, I imagine the designers got to this.
Right. I just wanted to make sure the fans heard that sort of thing, because sometimes like we open up with donation deck lists and they have all these different plans, and from the beginning we're like, oh, I don't know. But this is one of those times where somehow it all actually manages to work, and this is probably one of the top 3 decks in Legacy right now.
Yeah, the Maniac plans or the Maniac donation decks that we get that have like we are Delver but also 12 post. It's like, whoa, that those plans are polar opposites. That doesn't work. But when you're like overlapping the whole way up the curve, of like the Rag plan overlaps with the Standstill, which overlaps with the Saga, which fuels Murktide Regent, and like all of that, like this is a machine. It just doesn't look like it at first glance.
All right, why don't we take a look at the other deck list we're going to be playing in round 1.
Right, this is Phil's Jund Hollowvine.
I have been loving this deck list because honestly, it feels like you're playing vintage Magic a lot of the time. It has some strong Bizarra Baghdad vibes. Lion's Eye Diamond is just Black Lotus with upside in this deck, which is kind of crazy to say because, Black Lotus is one of the best Magic cards printed of all time. But when you want to discard your hand to Fuel Madness cards, it ends up doing absolutely broken things.
Yeah, Black Lotus with upside. This is the same conversation that people are having about Faithless Looting when it was dominating Modern. People were saying Faithless Looting is better than one red draw two cards. Like the discard was worth a lot. It was worth more in that Is It Phoenix Shell that was dominating Modern, and people genuinely thought draw two, discard two was better than straight up draw two at the time. And Lion's Eye Diamond just tacks that theory onto a Black Lotus, and we literally have the Faithless Looting, the subject of that conversation in the deck as well.
So this is another one of those decks that if you've been playing Legacy, you have run into this. It's extremely powerful and is one of the few true aggro decks of the format. And we've been talking about that on the Eternal Glory podcast recently. Aggro is pretty uncommon as a super viable Legacy archetype. But this deck just smashes.
It really does. It's pretty terrifying.
All right, so let's kind of conceptually talk about how we think the matchup is going to go. Brian, where are your thoughts at?
Okay. What's going to happen in this matchup is that you're going to test my removal right away. The first test is going to be the first spell that goes on this deck, like your Lion's Eye Diamond, your Faithless Looting. Do I have a counterspell for it? That's going to matter a lot. Like the blue side of this matchup has to play like they're playing against Dredge, much more than like they're playing against Hogak. And when you play against Dredge as a fair blue deck, especially in game one where no help's coming from the sideboard, you have to basically force a will the enabler, because once they get a little foot in the door, they're just going to kick it open. So the first test is going to be, do I have force for your Lion's Eye Diamond? And then after that, it's going to be how many spot removal spells do I have versus how many threats do you have? Right? My deck does have 4 Plow and 3 Prismatic Ending in it, which is a lot of spot removal. But at the same time, if you play 2 Root Wallas, trigger Vengevine, and cast Hollow One in the first 2 turns, I have to answer the 2 4-power creatures, which Prismatic Ending cannot answer Vengevine or Hollow One, by the way. And so I have to have Plow for the big things and end the small things, and having 2 of these in the early turns isn't a big ask, but having 3 or 4 definitely is. And any residual Root Walla can clock.
All right. So I know you're famous for the whole Island Ponder. That's a keep. Would you keep a hand that does not have a Force of Will or a Swords to Plowshares in this matchup? Assuming the rest of the hand looks pretty good, how important are those cards to you?
I don't really want to play a Force of Will game, though I suppose I am sort of priced into it in game one. Though I'm not going to mulligan to Force of Will, I promise you that. I might mulligan a hand that has no removal in it. I guess Stifle does a little bit of work, because you can stifle a Madness trigger or stifle a Vengevine trigger, and that's kind of a removal spell as long as you're ahead of it. It doesn't help once the creature's already in play, of course. But there's some range to 1 Plow with a Ponder is an easy keep. A Ponder, a Brainstorm, and a Stifle with no Plow. I would make that happen. So I would need some context. Play draw matters a lot. Do I get to cast my Ponder before or after you do what you want to do? So we'll see. I'm pretty scared of it though, for sure. And there is the YOLO spike of I have Soul Guide Lantern as an Urza Saga Bullet in the deck, and I could just have that in my hand too. So that's the biggest wild card.
Yeah, I think game one is scary for you, and then the post sideboard games you have just so much more game. You have Grafter's Cage and Tormod's Crypt, Containment Priest, maybe even Narset is worth considering. You've got good tools for the post sideboard games.
Yeah, Canonist, Pyroclasm. There's a lot of good stuff going on in my sideboard here. But game one is terrifying. Though my experience playing Ragstill is that nothing stays on the board given enough time. this deck grinds harder than Miracles, which is crazy to say. It grinds harder than Bant, and it's just a matter of surviving those early turns. But unlike Bant and Miracles, I have a playset of 1 mana 2/1s that I could just put in play and block with. And Ragavan's job in this matchup is definitely going to be to soak up damage or trade with the Brute Walla most of the time.
All right, when we take a look at my end of things now. So my game one plan is very much to just get you dead. I want to have either a Lion's Eye Diamond or a Putrid Imp in my opener if possible, so that I can make these very aggressive, very strong turn one plays. The Burning Inquiry and Faithless Looting based things are fine too, but in my ideal world, I would like to go close to all in on either turn one or turn two and just say, deal with this.
Yep, that's definitely what I'm worried about. The games where you try to sculpt like a turn 3 double Vengevine rather than a turn 1 double Root Walla. I'd rather play the turn 3 game, even if it's more powerful, than the scrappy turn 1 game.
Yeah, and if I get the nuts, I can be attacking on turn one because of anger.
Yep.
And those are the scariest hands of all. Unfortunately, I don't think I really improve at all in the post sideboard games. If you kind of look at the tools that are in my sideboard, the things that exist here are to answer very specific problems. Ancient Grudge for artifacts, Bone Shards and Firestorm largely for creatures. But because this Ragstill deck is kind of all over the place, I don't really have targeted cards for it. I'll probably end up bringing in some Firestorms, so I have answers to things like Containment Priest, or I can kill a Ragavan if I need to. But I'm not gonna improve a ton, and I'm not sure that I'm actually supposed to, bring in something like a Pithing Needle to try and stop Urza's Saga, because every card that I board in is one card that is not focusing on Plan A.
Right. And on that topic, for the viewers, this is open deck list. Obviously, we're talking through the matchup, but we agreed to play the list that we would play in an open field, even though I knew I was playing against Madvine and Phil knew he was playing against Ragstill. We didn't jack up our sideboards. These are basically stock list, or at least our own how we would approach an open field list.
So Brian, everything on the table. Who do you think is going to win round one?
I think I will win, obviously, because I'm going to bet on myself. That's what Disney Channel movies taught me, right? But in seriousness, I think you will win game one, and then you just need to split the uprights in game two situations, and we will see if you can do that. I hate to say it, but I think variance will come up a lot. Like if you mulligan to 5 looking for that explodey hand and just have 2 fewer threats than if your 7 was good, or if you just keep 7 3 times, you're going to win. I think that the inherent variance in the Madvine deck, like you're going to take discipline mulligans, and I know that you are, and that's part of playing the deck, but I think the difference between me having to deal with 3 creatures off a Multi 5 or 5 creatures off a kept 7 is going to be the decider in this match.
Yeah, I think this match conceptually is pretty close. I think the Hollowvine deck, whatever you want to call this, Madvine, probably wins the game ones most of the time, but the post sideboard games are scarier, and I'm just hoping to win one of the two. This is a match that I would expect to go to 3 games most of the time when you play it.
Yeah, one thing that's a relief from my side of the matchup is while this feels like Dredge, it's not actually. Like you are trying to win with creatures at the end of the day and not complete non-magic nonsense. Like you are turning creatures sideways to deal 20 damage, which is just fundamental magic. And my deck does have a bunch of removal in it. If we get to turn 3, turn 4, and I start making Saga tokens, my constructs will be bigger than your creatures. So there is some very like core set limited magic fundamentals that are going to come up in here, even in the game one situation. It's not like Dredge where it's literally just, okay, I lose game one. Like we will have game to play as long as I keep good hands and make the decisions with my cantrips and get into turn 3, turn 4. It's winnable, unlike actual Dredge.
So I hope you have kind of enjoyed this primer on kind of what we think both sides of the matchup are going to look like. We got pretty deep into the weeds here. So Brian, anything you want to say before we get into the match itself?
Nope. Good luck. Let's do it.
All right, let's battle.
Alright, so now it's go time. Looking at my opening hand here, I have a Once Upon a Time followed by a Burning Inquiry. I have the potential to have turn 1 Hasty Hollow Ones, or I could just randomly discard my Hollow Ones and have nothing. We'll be keeping this hand, although this is a relatively high variance hand. Alright, looks like Brian is taking an initial mulligan. He was thinking about that first one a little bit, so it might have been missing a piece. Again, I really think he wants a Force of Will when he is on the draw. Like, a Swords to Plowshares based hand is acceptable. But if I sneak some Hollow Ones into play, then he will have a lot of trouble just dealing with the initial onslaught, especially if I high roll and they become hasty. Let's do this Once Upon a Time thing. That can just grab a fetch land, I suppose. Alright. So, go Taiga, Burning Inquiry, and to see what happens. I really need this to resolve. Yet. Okay, my hand is real bad now. Brian will probably win this game for having that Force of Will. Alright. What else is going on here? It is a Ragavan, so his opener is very good here. Alright. Am I just going to play out Double Idiot? I probably just need to play out Double Idiot so that I don't just get got by Ragavan getting in there and starting to do Ragavan things. But this hand absolutely fell apart. C'est la vie. So my hope now is that, like, Brian does not have too much gas left in the tank. Okay. So he is forcing the trade. That's fine. I would have attacked in anyway. So he wants to take that trade offensively because if I don't take it, he gets mana. Alright. What is the follow-up? Okay. I am in the danger zone, not the fun one either. Oh shit. Yep. All right. Brian's got this game, unless. Okay, so this is going to resolve. All right, so now I have to think about which one of these lands I want to tap here. It's like, do I want to be able to cast either Rootwalla that ends up stuck in my hand, or do I want to be able to cast a Putrid Imp? I think I want to be able to cast either Rootwalla that gets stuck in my hand in case I like draw Vengevine as well. Alright, let's see what happens. Okay, we discarded one Hollow One. So now do I want to Faithless Looting this turn? Anji's Ravager isn't doing me any good and probably doesn't do me any good next turn either. I think I will cast this and try to get a Madness Dork into play, or find another copy of Hollow One. Vengevine. I'm going to discard that, and then it's a question of, like, how do I feel about Burning Inquiry versus keeping an Anji's Ravager? I think I'm supposed to keep an Anji's Ravager. It's such a good way to reload later. Now we just hope that Brian's last card isn't Daze, because I did not play around it. Alright, how do I feel about Hollow One attacking here? It's kind of weird, because, like, the Ragavan treasure token is super relevant, as are the cards. And so now it's a question of, like, do I want to play Sword and Shield, or am I just straight up the beatdown? It's so bad if I don't attack and then Brian has Swords to Plowshares. This decision is really tough. I think I'm gonna chill. With this Anji's Ravager here, like, this can become hasty, crash in for 3, and then, like, I can reload from there, try to do Vengevine shenanigans, and I feel like I can make a more effective, larger attack later. But I don't want Ragavan attacking in and creating a whole bunch of chump blockers that then become problematic for me. Brian's pausing here, which means that he does have a castable spell. It is a Pithing Needle, so I'm guessing that name's Putrid Imp. It's possible it names a fetch land. Okay, not the direction I thought that was going to go, but a reasonable direction. Okay. Now, I think I am gonna go ahead and make my move. So I'm going to cast LED. Going to crack for triple red. Guards in Anji's Ravager. I will go ahead and cast. That is my first creature. Now I am going to go ahead and not cast Faithless Looting, I think. It's very tempting to cast this Faithless Looting and try to hit a Madness creature, but I'm more likely to just hit something that I can cast off the Anji's Ravager trigger later. So I don't think I'm going to try to high roll here. I think I'm just going to try to take the more consistent play, which probably returns the Vengevine anyway. All right, that puts my opponent to 11. Now I will be able to return the Vengevine when I cast this Basking Root Wallet. So the question is, like, I think I want this third land. Let's go ahead and fetch. I'll grab another Taiga. I will cast Burning Inquiry. There is only upside for me to do so. Now, we'll go ahead and cast the Basking Root Wallet. Go ahead and returns the Vengevine. Alright, and I'm pretty far ahead. I have, like, Faithless Looting available to me. And I also have, like, Anji's Ravager to refuel. Life is good. I have a lot of pressure. Now note that this Basking Root Wallet has been shut off by Pithing Needle. So this is just a 1-1. Alright, and there is the game 1 concession. Okay. One moment. Okay, we had to make a new game. So Brian has just conceded the game, so we're going to be picking up as normal here. Okay, so kind of like I talked about in the intro, I don't think I get to do too much in terms of like sideboarding for this matchup. I will probably bring in the Firestorms because they can answer Ragavan or get Urza Saga tokens out of the way, and they can also answer some things like Containment Priest. I might bring in an Ancient Grudge or two, because those can both answer things like Grafdigger's Cage and answer Urza Saga tokens that otherwise might be a little bit problematic. Also, what are you doing so far over? Can I scooch you over? Nope, I don't get to scooch you over right now, apparently. Oh wait, is that the wrong bar? Aha, there we go. Okay, something like that's a little bit better. So I usually cut the gamble for the post-sideboard games. I usually trim 1 anger for the post-sideboard games, and I often trim 1 once upon a time. So that gives me the Firestorms to start with, and then do I want to actually board in some Ancient Grudges? On the draw, I think it's reasonable to like go down on some angers for some Ancient Grudges, but I think I want the angers when I'm on the play. I think that's the route I'm going to take. This means that I lose out on some amount of my explosiveness, but I am less Stone Cold Dead to an Urza Saga just stabilizing board, which I think is an okay place to be. Oop. Didn't mute myself. I'm having some Gatorade. Gotta stay hydrated. Okay, this is a slightly below average power level opening hand. This produces a hollow 1 on turn 2. Which will be dazable. I think I can do better than this. Oh, wow. Okay. So this is a hand that has great potential, but does nothing currently. I think I am going to keep this. I think the potential it has is very strong. And if this Faithless Looting gets countered, I'll still have the Lion's Eye Diamond for later when I actually assemble something of relevancy. This is good to have for later. So I think I am going to go ahead and use Taiga, cast Faithless Looting. I want this Badlands to not get wastelanded, so I can use it to cast Putrid Imp on turn 2. Now, Daze is live when my opponent is on the play. Okay. So I am going to discard a Vengevine and a land here. And then on turn 2, I will just play Putrid Imp and Blazing Rootwalla just naturally from hand. And then return a Vengevine. I'll just send a fetch land away here. I don't think I need to take the damage. And I think I'll be using Lion's Eye Diamond as a bait spell. See if my opponent even plays anything. I guess a standstill would be pretty good for them here. A Grim Lavamancer. Sure. Burning Inquiry. That is mighty interesting. Alright. So, we are going to go land Lion's Eye Diamond, and this will get a counterspell if Brian has one. All right. Yep. As we drew it up. Now, next, I will play a Putrid Imp. This is creature number 1 for the turn. Now, I'm going to go ahead and cast Burning Inquiry. This can set me up for some very large Hollow One plays. Okay, Anji's Ravager, not what I am looking for in this exact spot. I will not cast that. I will discard a Blazing Rootwalla. I get stifled, I don't get stifled. My second creature, which is going to return the Vengevine. Yes. Resolve that, and I can cast this Blazing Rootwalla later. I can just cast that on my opponent's turn. And we'll ship in with the Vengevine. Now, I did force Brian to discard some rather good cards. I also fueled the Grim Lavamancer while doing so, though, so it's sort of interesting overall where we ended up. Swords of Plowshares on Vengevine is so good. Prismatic Ending on my Imp. Well, my hand has been forced. I will go ahead and cast this now. And then I will lose this. I'll lose a Blazing Rootwalla to the Grim Lavamancer activation, and it's very possible that I will lose a second to just Grim Lavamancer blocking. It depends on how much Brian values those couple of points of life. He's got an interesting decision here for which land to wasteland. I agree with his decision. Does this cast both Rootwallas, as well as Once Upon a Time, and the black is basically only Putrid Imp. Alright, Vengevine is not what I am looking for while I have a single land, but maybe it can be good later. Send them in. Okay, there is no blocks, so Brian is going to go ahead and junk whichever one I pump. So I'm going to let priority go to him, and then I will let him try to kill one, and I will respond by pumping the other one. Or I sneak 1 point of damage in. Okay, Brian is not willing to let me get the extra damage in. This has been a very intricate game. Alright, goodbye Rootwalla number 1. Okay, that is horrifying. That's something that can rumble with this Vengevine. You know, two 2/2 Urza Saga tokens will kill a Vengevine. My goal is going to be I will pump out of spite. Get big, lizard. My goal is going to be to return 2 Vengevines to play, and deal the final 8-ish points of damage that way. I have a Faithless Looting in graveyard that eventually, okay, just Brian is gonna soak up some damage here and probably throw 2 damage at my face. That is indeed what is happening. Oh no, I'm gonna go ahead and trade with the Vengevine that way. That's fair, that's a better line. Alright, land go. I'm not sure who is currently favored. I think it's Brian, because this Urza Saga can get the lantern, the Soul Guide Lantern, and Torment's Crypt this stuff all away. So I think Brian's favored here. But I could be wrong. I'm going to go ahead and fetch to thin here. I have a few very specific cards that I want to draw. Oh, that's a very good card. Quite happy with drawing that. My question now will be, like, do I want to wait a turn and see if I draw a land in order to cast Ancient Grudge and then cast it with Flashback immediately? I think I do. Alright, so here's the other Urza Saga token. Almost certainly grabbing Soul Guide Lantern and probably hitting the Vengevine over the Faithless Looting. Yep. For sure. Alright, and a Ponder after everything is said and done. Okay. So, I actually could just Ancient Grudge the construct now, because the Ancient Grudge would kill a construct token and the Soul Guide Lantern, because my opponent surely wouldn't let me untap with it. So I think that's fine. Boom. And this means that, yep, that I will get to keep this second Vengevine for the future, which is potentially pretty important. I'm just going to hold this and try to do multiple things that matter in the same turn if possible. I don't want to play this out and get it tagged by Prismatic Ending and then lose the opportunity to cast something like an Anji's Ravager. Alright, Dash Ragavan is pretty good. I have no defenses currently. Ooh. How do you feel about that 1 damage? Alright, he wants the 1 damage. I think that attack is totally reasonable. The Bloodstain Mire. I'm good with that going. Now, in case you haven't seen this combo before, Ragavan makes treasure tokens. Treasure tokens grow constructs, and that's why these things pair together so well. So this is going to become larger than my Vengevines somewhat quickly. Oh fuck, it stands still. Oh no, is it worse? Is that a Murktide Regent? Oh no. Okay. That probably is the death knell for me. Now this Vengevine isn't just going to get to cleanly attack in. What are my outs? Probably multiple Vengevines. I think I want to play this card. Alright. There's a Vengevine and a Blazing Rootwalla. I will cast this. Now I think I go ahead and cast this. That returns the Vengevine. Now I am going to go ahead and just pass the turn here. And all of a sudden, it's possible that I could win this game, because I can use this Lion's Eye Diamond to double pump the Rootwallas. But Brian has this huge attacker in the air, so I'm not quite sure that I'm actually going to get there. Yeah, that's good. So now this Murktide Regent can attack in, and I am dead to it next turn. With basically no answers, because I didn't board in the bone shards. Okay. I need more power. Okay, well, that means I basically have 1 line available to me. Lion's Eye Diamond. Crack for red. Cast Faithless Looting. Discard Burning Inquiry and Hollow One. We're gonna give it the old college try. Get him. I'm gonna go ahead and take out that construct. I will let Brian have his triumphant attack for 8. What a brutal Murktide Regent. That is death. Now we'll go to a game 3. So the Murktide Regent is a 2-of. And my opponent reasonably could find one in a game. But I don't know that I actually want to play Bone Shards. The Ancient Grudge felt pretty darn good this game. Just clearing 2/3 of the Urza's Saga. I think I'm fine with keeping some in. The Angers are just so tempting though, because they make like the Ravagers and such so much better. Hollow ones. But I kind of think I like how I've boarded. I think I'm gonna stick with this. Like there's a world where on the play I try to Pithing Needle Urza's Saga. You know, there's a world where I play Angers, there's a world where I bring in the 3rd Ancient Grudge. But I feel like I have a good middle ground here. Okay, so if I keep this hand, once upon a time, I need to find a black land. If I resolve a Putrid Imp, I just attack for 1 on... Sorry. I get to resolve Putrid Imp. I create a Vengevine on turn 1, and I have 2 Rootwallas in play. If this Once Upon a Time misses, I lose the game. What percentage of the time am I going to hit? And is this risk worth it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 hits. 11 hits with 5 looks is probably acceptable. I'm gonna keep... Alright. Once Upon a Time. Alright, there is the black land. Fantastic. And the cool thing here is that if Putrid Imp gets Force of Willed, I can just try again next turn and on the following turn. Grab the Old Art Badlands. Putrid Imp. Okay, there is the Force of Will. So now we are just hoping for not Wasteland. As long as it's not Wasteland, I get to try again. Okay, great. Now I can still get dazed or something. Like there's still things that can happen. Alright, that's good. I have an Ancient Grudge. And the ability to cast it. So I'll just pass the turn here, Ancient Grudge this, and then we'll work on the Vengevine shenanigans for the next turn. Alright. I don't think I get the luxury of playing around the days here. But, you know, there's two sides to the Ancient Grudge, so... Nice. Alright. Try Putrid Imp. Okay. Discard the Vengevine. Let's hopefully not get stifled. I think he has a stifle. He could just stifle the Vengevine trigger instead, I suppose. Pass this. Here's the Vengevine trigger. Alright, yeah, that got stifled. Alright, so now I have Flashback Ancient Grudge for the first of the Urza Saga tokens. And then I still have an acceptable clock. Ooh, a Wasteland. That's a prismatic ending on the Imp. That's happening. And then I'm guessing my Taiga is going so that I can't flashback Ancient Grudge next turn. That is indeed what's happening. I'll float the mana. Not that it's going to matter here, but you know, good habits. The Vengevine. That's mighty fancy. I think I don't play Putrid Imp this turn. I think I just poke for 1. Now Brian can get Soul Guide Lantern here, but I've succeeded in making it so that he can't actually get any constructs out of this first Urza Saga, which is pretty huge. Oh, alright, there's a Soul Guide Lantern. Okay. I'm going to get to keep the Ancient Grudge. Means that I can Ancient Grudge that Lantern at some point. Oh, just immediately taking the card there. I'm a little surprised about, but okay. So now I'm going to set up for a Vengevine. I think by casting the Once Upon a Time at my opponent's end step. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and let that go. Because more so than anything else, I just want to get large creatures into play before my opponent can find like a True Name Nemesis or a Murktide Region or something. Do I get stifled? Not get stifled. Okay. So this is my last green source in here. Alright. So if I discard Vengevine, all one still costs 3. If I discard Vengevine plus whatever other card that I draw, hollow one costs 1, and that works. I should probably take the hollow one. I'm gonna go ahead and default to the larger creature here. Oh, do I wait? I wait. Now I think this is a moment where I don't try to greed, just go for absolute highest value. All right, so discard that. Discard the hollow one. Cast the hollow one. Try to return the Vengevine. Yes. And I'll go ahead and send in. And we'll see if Brian has anything here. Ooh. Good news for Phil fans. Where targeting the hollow one? Ooh, into a Pyroclasm. That's a pretty good follow-up. Still have 4 power in play. An Ancient Grudge in the hole. So, go ahead and send in. Is it a Swords to Plowshares? It does not appear to be a Swords to Plowshares. Brian goes to 6. I will go ahead and play this out. The reason to play it out is because like the combination of these 2 cards is just lethal next turn. There's a world where you want to sandbag Basking Root Wallet to try to get the Vengevine back. Okay, this will no longer be lethal next turn, and I will never get to pump this card now. That also means that I never get to flashback Ancient Grudge, huh? Very much never. Okay, Firestorm is cool. You know, that's potentially the thing that allows me to limp over the finish line if Brian is able to stabilize the board. This is X damage to each of X targets. So I can discard the card that I draw next turn, and then Firestorm is potentially lethal. True Name Nemesis. Resolves. Alright. So I'll go ahead and send on in. Get him. Alright. The little lizard that could. And I win the first round of this. Did you ever doubt the lizards? GG's.
For round number 2, I'm playing Bant. If you've watched my channel at all, or looked at any Legacy top 8 list since Oko was printed, and since Uro was printed, despite multiple bans along the way, Bant is omnipresent in the top tier of Legacy, and I'm still on it today. This is my current build that I would play in a Grand Prix tomorrow. This is the deck that I'm number 1 on, and I wanted to make sure this was represented in the spread.
So something that Brian and I are just huge believers in is the power of basic lands and a stable mana base and just being able to consistently cast your spells. And I'm known for sort of playing Red Prison style decks, and so we wanted to create this round specifically to kind of show how the existence of Bant has caused just huge warpings in the nature of the Red Prison, Red Stompy decks. But Brian, I'll let you go ahead and talk about Bant for a minute.
Yeah, I'm not going to do the full deck tech rundown, and you can watch any of my other dozen Bant videos if you want that. But specifically in the Red Stompy matchup, the Red Stompy deck used to be primarily a prison deck. Like, it would lock you out and take away your ability to play the game with Blood Moon, Chalice, Trinisphere, and then at some point present a threat when it was good and safe to do so. The fundamental changes in Bant and cards that have been printed had to change the Moon Stompy's plan, and Phil will talk about that, but Force of Negation on top of the 4 Force of Wills, that's a big change. Back in the Deathrite Shaman era, I was playing Blue-White Miracles, Moon Stompy was tier 1, and Grixis Delver was tier 1, and having only 4 forces, there was a lot of stress early on, especially in game 1s where it's like, okay, if they have Chalice, can I afford to wait until my Council's Judgment gets online? I don't want to have to force anything I don't have to. But now that we have 5 of them, and a lot of Bant lists have 6, they play 2 Force of Negation, the early turns get a lot easier to survive. And more recently, holy guacamole, Prismatic Ending. This card is so good. All control players want on the planet is versatile answers. They want to spend fewer deck slots on more answers to things. And Prismatic Ending just answers Delver on curve, answers Trinisphere on turn 3, answers Chandra on turn 4. I do have the red splash, so I can get up to 4 with my Prismatic Endings in this build. That's what the Volcanic Island is primarily there for. And there's just so much going on in these decks. So many free slots that we're playing anyway that line up well against what Moon Prison is doing. It's just a totally different matchup than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, agreed. And generally speaking, I don't really think Chalice of the Void decks are super viable in Legacy anymore. There are still a few exceptions, but it used to be like if you showed up to an event with Red Prison, like you had a very realistic chance of winning, and I've won a challenge with the deck. But now, I don't think I would be caught dead playing that deck in a GP under any circumstances.
Yeah, the stock has gone way down in Chalice of the Void over the years, and even before Prismatic Ending and every white deck just had a bunch of main deck answers for Chalice, the mana curve's diversified. Ever since War of the Spark gave us the Planeswalkers, the Teferi, Narset, Karn kind of stuff. Modern Horizons, we got Icefang, Coatl. People figured out that Sylvan Library still exists, and it's a much more playable card with Uro that's also a 3-drop. Like, these decks don't just fold to Chalice anymore, and they used to. And there's part of what I'm doing with Bant that a lot of people aren't doing is a lot of people are on 19 lands with 2 or 3 Abundant Harvest, and I'm on 20 lands with 0 Abundant Harvest. And I've just found that hitting my land drops, skipping the middleman, like if I have to spend turn 2 casting Abundant Harvest into a daze just to try to find my second land, I feel like I lose those games more often than when I just make my land drops from my hand and start casting my more expensive spells. And I like that plan just even in the blue matchups, the daze matchups, but when you do run into Chalice of the Void, you really don't want those extra 3 1-drops in the deck, especially when they're counted as lands for your mana base. That's just risky business, and luckily I am just pre-built for Chalice matchups.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. Looking at your sideboard, like you're probably not going to sideboard too much for this matchup. You have the tools that you need in the main deck. You'll do some fine tuning. The EE and the Hydroblast are just like absolutely slam dunks, and maybe you can consider a few other things. But game one looks real good.
Yeah, I mentioned this on Eternal Glory this past week. I wrote up a full sideboard guide for my Patreon. By the way, if you want that, go join the Patreon. Links in the video description. But I wrote up a full sideboard guide for this 75 for the Patreon just the other day. And when I was writing up the matches like lands and Red Prison and stuff, I was like, oh, where's my wilt? Where's my return to nature? Is this deck misbuilt? Like it just that muscle memory kept like triggering like, oh no, I'm missing something. But I'm actually not, because there's just 3 prismatic endings in the main deck. You don't need a disenchant in the sideboard anymore. You just have 3 vindicates in the main. So this is so streamlined right now, and I think it's gonna be rough on you. But what has Moonstompy done to adjust?
Okay, so the name of the deck is often Moonstompy, right? Notice what is missing in this deck list. It is the Blood Moons.
There's not a single moon. There's not even a Magus. There used to be 8.
That's
Now
no
there's 0.
moon. The 2 of them are chilling in the sideboard, just in case we need them. But this deck has transformed a lot. Full disclosure here, I have never played this exact 75, but when I was looking for, kind of a deck list to play for this, I saw this Urza Saga version and I was super intrigued. I like where the design space is at. So conceptually, the idea is that the Blood Moon effects are not super strong right now. There's a lot of decks that are going under them if you have to play on turn 2. If your opponent starts out with a Ragavan and just can make all the colored mana they need, or they can just cast the Ragavan after a Blood Moon, that's not super effective. And the Bant deck just has so many ways to deal with a Blood Moon, whether it's just like drawing the basics naturally or prismatic ending it away, or Force of Vigor in post sideboard games. Wilt is an option even though you're not playing it. That Moon is probably not the best place to be. So instead, you're playing Urza Saga, which can either be a turn 1 play, and you follow it up with a piece of fast mana of some kind and just start pumping out constructs. Or, after you've gone through your initial wave, it can be your inevitability for the games going long.
Yeah, looking at this list, I'm much more afraid of Goblin Rabblemaster than I am of Blood Moon. I'm much more afraid of Fire Flux Squad than Magus of the Moon. There's only 3 Trinispheres. That's probably right. Drawing the second one's always bad, and being able to pump out constructs with Saga under Trinisphere is cool. Like, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on with this deck right now.
Yeah, and one of the subtle things that has changed the deck a lot is the presence of Fury, which is the red card from the recent Evoke cycle. And it deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers. So this means that, sticking, a Teferi early on isn't just going to be, a lights out thing. A lot of times, like, a Teferi goes, bounces the Chalice, sticks around, bounces something out. Fury gives you a way to finish those off while clearing the way for the Goblin Rabble-Masters and Legion War Bosses. It also does 4 damage, which is a super convenient number because of the existence of the big fat booty on Endurance.
Yep, true that. Definitely, there's too many creatures for the Bant deck to answer 1 for 1 here. And all of your creatures being more than one thing. Like the Saga's 2 creatures. These are X creatures, where X is the number of turns they're in play plus 1. Even your mana is sometimes creatures. Like, Bant's doesn't have enough Swords to Plowshares to answer all this, so at some point I'm going to need to put a 3/4 Endurance into play, and then a 3/3 Shark Typhoon Shark into play. I'm going to need to get a trade-off Ice Fang Coatl. And Fury being able to pressure that side plan, like getting a body into play. Like, if you can kill an Uro after I do all the work to get it into play, like, that's going to set me back pretty hard. Like, this deck definitely looks like it's built with the present metagame in mind in a way that is extremely unfortunate for me.
Yeah, and here's where I'm going to blow some viewers' minds. Okay, so I'm the Chalice of the Void deck, right? Chalice of the Void is not going to be in my deck for the post-sideboard games. I just don't think it is going to be particularly good in this matchup in a lot of cases because having the Pyroblasts and Red Elemental Blasts is so important for dealing with the Uros.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I'm gonna have every answer to Chalice in my deck anyway. So you get value by throwing them out and making my answers line up poorly. And again, Prismatic Ending. Nothing lines up poorly against Prismatic Ending except for 6-drops. So there's that going on. But if I did have Wilt, if I did have Disenchant, Return to Nature, those cards get a whole lot worse when they're answering one Saga token out of the 3 artifacts that card produced instead of just one clutch piece like Chalice. And you're just inviting more 1-for-2 trades and baiting me into them if I board in that way. So while also freeing up your good sideboard cards, that just makes so much sense to cut the Chalices.
Yep, and like you just have to respect them, especially when I'm on the play. Because if I do decide to like, oh, I'm on the play, I'm up a game, I should just, go Ancient Tomb Chalice on turn 1, play some creatures, and hope that that gets you dead. Like that's a plan that you just absolutely have to respect.
Yep. I mean, I'm certainly not going to cut any answers to Chalice of the Void. Even though we had this conversation, I'm still just going to have all the answers in that I could have. Against this build, I might cut the Force of Negation, just if I had open deck lists, even without this conversation, because you have so many creatures. But Force of Will has to be in the deck. Anything that can point and click remove any permanent is going to be in the deck. Even if it is restricted, like I would play Disenchant over just some random other card. Just anything that can point and click remove something is going to be in the deck.
All right. So all this information on the table. Who's going to take down this round?
I think that Bant is favored, and I think it's by a lot, but the cheese factor is there. Bant is still a control deck. Its answers still have to line up to the threats. Like, you're still asking hard questions, and Bant has a lot of good answers to hard questions, but only one War Boss or one Rabble Master needs to sneak through one turn of staying alive, and then I'm behind and it's tough to catch up. So I think it's me, but it's not foregone. This should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and that's why we chose this matchup. Like, I submitted this deck list, and I actually suggested this exact matchup, knowing that I would probably lose, but I thought the conversation around it was super interesting. If I adjusted this list specifically to play against Brian, and like all of a sudden there's like a Retrofitter Foundry in this list, and the 4th War Boss instead of these Bone Crusher Giants, like I could swing things more in my favor. But this deck really needs the tools that are there to help beat like the Delver and the Ragavan based decks.
Yep, this is gonna be good. I'm honestly stressed out about it. Like, even knowing, like, this is the sort of matchup where even knowing that it's good for me, even if it is like 70%, which I don't think it is, I think it's probably closer to like 60, 65 maybe. But even if it was 80%, 20% of the time, you're still going to cheese me out. And if there's one thing that I hate, it's getting cheesed out. That's why I like Bant. It's very resistant to cheese, but the pressure is there, and I'm a little worried about it.
Oh yeah, this is the sort of deck where like you can be 5-1 in an event, and then you get paired against this, and it's like, oh, I'm a little nervous, even though this is favorable.
Yeah, like if you asked me before the Grand Prix, if like a genie appeared and was like, would you like to play against Red Prison every round of this event? I would snap off yes. Just on the math, on the numbers, I'm likely to top 8 that event. Like, I'm likely to just run roughshod over that field. But if just 2 of those people have RNGesus on their side, or I take a rough mulligan to 5 and I end up 1 removal spell short for that 3rd creature that you have, like, these things can happen. The turn 1 Trinisphere on the play when my hand is just 3 Swords to Plowshares, like, those are the sort of things that this deck puts you to the test on.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the skill in piloting a deck like this one is navigating your mulligans and your first 2 turns. Like, you have to pick the path to victory very quick consistently if you want to do well with this deck, because this is one of those things where if you missequence your pieces, like your threat versus lock piece order, that sort of stuff, you're just going to lose to yourself.
Yeah, I tell this story all the time, so my regular viewers have probably heard it before, but in round one, game one of Eternal Week in Paris in 2019, my opponent was on the play, and they mauled to 5, and then went Chrome Mox, Pitch Goblin Rabblemaster, Ancient Tomb, Blood Moon, passed the turn with 1 card in hand. And I went Basic Island, Arkham's Astrolabe, passed the turn with 7 cards in hand. And the game was already over. But my hand did not have Swords to Plowshares in it. If they had pitched their Blood Moon and cast their Rabblemaster, I would have lost that game on the spot to that same opening salvo. But there's no way for them to know that. But this deck, it removes that question. Like, you have the 3 Trinispheres, but other than that, you're jamming a 3-drop into play. And that's always been the scarier plan against control decks.
All right, let's just get into things.
Let's do it.
Okay, I have what I consider to be a below average opening hand here. So this opens up Chalice of the Void into Bone Crusher Giant. I can get a blocker out of the way with Fury, but Bone Crusher Giant doesn't spiral out of control the way other threats do, and I will need 2 mana sources in order to play Fireflux Squad as a follow-up, so I think I'm going to go ahead and mulligan this hand. Absolutely not. This is a 5-card hand. It's Chrome Mox, Imprint, Fury, play Urza's Saga, and Chalice of the Void on 1. This hand is actually really strong. I'm going to keep this. I'm 100% throwing back a Mountain, and then it's like, I want to throw back City of Traders versus Mountain. If my Chrome Mox were to get like Prismatic Endinged, I'd rather have City of Traders. It also lets me play like a Fireflux Squad off the top. So I think I'll be good with keeping the City of Traders. It can be a little bit awkward. Alright, another Fury. Not the card I was hoping to draw here. Alright. There's Fury. There's Urza Saga. And here is my Chalice. Alright, it has resolved. But again, that doesn't mean nearly as much as it used to mean. Alright, Brian. Gonna Prismatic Ending my shit? Okay. Oh, it's just a Sylvan Library. A Bone Crusher Giant. Kinda whatever. Alright, City Pass. Now, Fury does not have a flash, so this can't be a combat trick or anything. I'm starting to think about Endurance. Also, I'm not playing Blood Moon effects in game 1, so I wonder if Brian was supposed to fetch a different land. I suppose there's Ice Fang Coatl to be thinking about. It's only a 2 of. Maybe fetching that land is indicative of an Ice Fang Coatl. Okay. So let's make my Urza Saga token. Oh, another Chalice. That's interesting. I'll go ahead and make this. Now I get to just do some soul searching. Wish I had a Lotus Petal. So I'm thinking about Ice Fang Coatl right now. I could get Chrome Mox, Imprint Fury, and then I have Bone Crusher Giant for Ice Fang Coatl this turn. I think that's a good line. Imprint Fury. 5 ya. How does he know? How does he know? Oh, we got the Stomp off. That's so good. So you remember what I said about the intro about like not making any mistakes and really sequencing your pieces well? That's a fantastic example of that. I don't mean to toot my horn, but like using the information I gathered, I figured out that my opponent had Ice Fang Coatl, and then I played around it to the best of my ability. No, I fucked up. I fucked up something small that matters. So I should have played Chalice for 0 last turn to deal 1 more damage so that my opponent is at 12, and then 2 6/6s is lethal. Oh, that's actually a really bad mistake. Oh, JK. I think I will go ahead and play this for 0 now. I don't know, I could play this one more conservatively and try to play this for X equals 2 and just cut off more of my opponent's cards. I could also just get in there. My opponent has 4 mana specifically. that mean anything? So there's 1 Ice Fang Coatl in the deck. There's 3 Endurances, 1 Hull Breacher. I don't think a Chalice on 2 matters much. Let's start by casting this. This is pretty likely to just trade with one of my opponent's creatures. Chalice for 0. And that is the concession. That felt good. Okay, so now I have to figure out how I'm going to board for this matchup. As I said in the intro, I think I really have to care about my 1-drops, the Red Elemental Blast, the Relic of Progenitus, that sort of stuff. From there, I can think about some dead Gons as well, just like bounce the Uros out of the way, or pick off Ice Fang Coatls. I think all the stuff over here, these 9 cards, are viable things to board in. I'm 100% boarding out Chalice of the Void. Don't want that card here. From there, it's a little trickier. Like, that swap is these 4 cards, and then I have 6 other cards that I can think about. The Chandra Awakened Infernos are cool and all, but they're very awkward against Uro. It's just such a late game inevitability card, though. I can potentially trim some number of Fury. Pithing Needle for Jace is probably important. Shadow Spear is kind of whatever, but, like, it's my Urza's Saga bullet, so I probably keep it. Trinisphere is a little weaker on the draw. How does it look if I cut the Trinispheres? I just, like, play these. Another thing that goes to the dome. 2 more things that answer Uro or Ice Fangs. I can think about Chandra Awakened Inferno. Chandra Awakened Inferno on the draw is pretty ambitious. I think it's fighting for slots with Fury. I think I'm okay with splitting those. The other thing I could do is cut some fast mana, assuming that the matchup drags on long, but I think a lot of times where I win, I just win early. I'm going to go ahead and submit like this, and we'll see how it feels. I'm also going to get some virtual value. My opponent, like, probably will have some artifact removal that I have more or less blanked. This is a little slow, but the card quality is good. Like, this is a turn 2 4/3 into a Fireflux squad that gets to roll it into something else. I think this is worse than a hand that just, like, leads on a turn 1 Goblin Rabblemaster. I would be very happy keeping this as, like, a 6-card hand minus one of these lands. So I think I'm gonna mulligan. This has no creatures, unfortunately. Okay. So I think this 5-card hand has a better chance of winning than my average 4-card hand. I'm going to go ahead and keep this one. I'm going to throw back Bone Crusher Giant and 1 Legion Warboss. I think I have to keep all my lands. I'm pretty likely to draw mana sources since this is a mana-heavy deck. But because Urza's Saga is one of these lands, I very much need the other 2 lands. That's good. I think I'm just going to go land pass here. And I'll imprint Legion Warboss and try Goblin Rabblemaster while playing Urza's Saga. Okay, JK. We can imprint Fiery Confluence instead. Alright. Play Urza's Saga. And we'll try the Rabblemaster. The Rabblemaster is the better threat if it resolves. And I want the better threat in play because I'm like pretty far behind in terms of, like, raw card quantity since I mulliganed twice. And if it doesn't resolve, I'm pumping my mana into Urza's Saga for the next 2 turns anyway. So, like, that is what it is. This is a bit of a slow brainstorm. That's good. Means that, like, the decision isn't just like snap easy, I've got this. Okay, we got a Force of Will for our Goblin Rabblemaster. Pitching a Chase. That's a huge win. Jace would just be so very good against the Urza Saga construct tokens that I'm about to make. Oh shit, that was Force of Vigor on my Urza Saga and Chrome Mox. This one's probably over. That was a very good sequence. In case you're not familiar with why that works, Force of Vigor destroys up to 2 artifacts and or enchantments, and Urza Saga is an enchantment land. Alright, is it Uro? It is Uro. Well, I have a bunch of answers to that in this deck for good reason. Okay, Soul Land was our literal best draw in the deck right there. So if I'm asking, now the top card in my library needs to be an answer to Uro. So we have, I think, 3 blast effects and 2 dead gons. Oh ho, that's not Uro coming back this turn. Now, if Uro's not coming back this turn, I would also accept Fireflux Squad as top card in my library. Also, so much for me blanking that Force of Vigor, huh? My opponent had some targets. I need a muffin. Delicious, delicious muffin. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Get them, boys. Alright, so all of them have to attack. I'll do the whole mentoring thing. Does Brian have any board wipes? Brian doesn't have board wipes. This is bad. I could pull up the deck list, or I could just wait to see if he draws Terminus. Yep. C'est la vie. Now we reached the point of the game where I hope Brian doesn't have lands for Uro. Alright. Alright. This is bad news bears. There's 10 cards in graveyard right now. So even if I answer the Uro once, it probably comes back the following turn anyway. Well, it would probably take 2 turns. Yep. Gave it the old college try here. But life's pretty bad now. Well, I think I just want to cast this on my turn. It opens it up to a Force of Negation, but it means that Brian can't cast like a Brainstorm or other piece of manipulation to try to draw into more cards first. Uro and Oko were both huge problem cards for Red Prison in previous metagames, and that was like part of the reason why this deck started to fall off the map, and why some of these hyper-aggressive builds that look to really go under the opponent became popular. Alright. Okay, there is actually a world where I start playing towards Chandra Awakened Inferno, but I think I just want to cast this 2/2. In the world where somehow this Uro doesn't come back for another turn cycle or 2, I want to be able to answer my opponent's stuff. Oh, it's Shark Typhoon. Yup. Shark Typhoon into Uro is a pretty good sequence. I think I'll take a draw step and then likely concede. Like, Brian's up to 17 with 3 different creatures in play. So the whole, like, aggro plan is not super realistic. Is there any way in which this wins me the game? I don't think so, but let's find out. Concede. I'm not technically dead, but like Spirit Guide has to chump block Uro. I take 4 in the air, and then like I'm just not coming back from that. Now the question becomes, do I want Trinisphere on the play? I think I need a couple Furies. Like, I think I just want access to that to help clear out problematic blockers. And like Fury would be fighting for Trinisphere, and like boarding in the Trinisphere when I boarded in like a bunch of like Pyroblasts and Dead Gons isn't the best in terms of just like synergy and managing my permanents or my various effects well. I think I'm just going to resubmit like this. Bone Crusher Giant is medium in some ways, but it still kills Ice Fang Coatls, and it has that like whenever it becomes the target of a spell, deals 2 damage to that spell's controller. So I think that's still fine. Like, maybe we can keep a 7-card hand this time. Wouldn't that be fucking wild? That would be too wild of a notion. This hand has no ability to deal real damage. This hand also sucks. Just, like, turn 2 Bone Crusher. Let's turn 2 Bone Crusher. And Fiery Confluence you to the Dome, then play Fury. I think I can just be more aggressive than this. Wow, just not so much with the keepable hands today, huh? This hand does nothing. I'm going to 4. Man, I can't even get a turn 1 Goblin Rabble Master after mulliganing to 4. Okay. Deep. Pitch a Chrome Mox. Pitch a City. Pitch a Mountain, I guess. I think I play Rabble Master before Urza's Saga, question mark. If I play Urza's Saga and I get Force of Virtue, it sucks. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go Mountain Go and treat the Saga as my late game. But this was a rough opener. Unless... Okay, straight up Hydroblast. Now, Urza Saga into Fireflux Squad is pretty hot as far as a turn goes. I get 4 damage immediately, and then I get to poop 2 constructs, assuming things go well. So like, there's still hope for me. But the variance was not kind this round. We got some snowlands. All right, Saga. The old Fireflux squad. Please don't force of will me. Nice. Get them. Things are a little scary though. All right. Are you going to be a spell this game? Probably not. I think I want you to be my second red source. Especially since I'm about to lose a land to the Urza Saga going away next turn. For sure. Is it a Swords to Plowshares or an Ice Fang Coatl? It is an Ice Fang Coatl. That's fine. We trade these. Better Skull, the Hammer pass. Would not like to pay 3 life. Okay, good. My opponent doesn't have green for endurance. Is very helpful. That selection is very nice for my opponent. I haven't pressured their life total enough, so they might be able to draw 1 to 2 cards off that Sylvan Library this game. Behold, my 1/1 token. Oh, Fiery Confluence is a great draw. So this turn, I'm gonna tap these 2 for Urza's. Okay, I'm gonna tap this Ancient Tomb no matter what. I'm just gonna tap it now. Oh, maybe I'm not gonna tap that no matter what. I was planning on getting Shadow Spear for the Trample and Lifelink, but I forgot about my Relic of Progenitus. Relic's pretty good here. I think I'm actually gonna grab that as Uro Insurance. Yeah, I was planning on putting this into play and equipping, but I don't actually think that's better than Relic after thinking on it for a second. Send them. Damn it, Brian. That was just rude. Alright. I actually probably need to rack this immediately and try to draw a Pyroblast. Damn, that would have been such a hype Pyroblast. Second main phase. I would like to play a Mana Monkey. Alright, so now Brian is at a healthy 15 with the Sylvan Library. That Dress Down was the perfect card for that situation. Notably, in case this comes up, Fiery Confluence doesn't hit Planeswalkers anymore. Each opponent now. Ah. Well. Wonder why I thought that was a relevant thing to say. Card has been placed on top of my library. Shadow Spear. Oh, if I want to play that this turn. Maybe I do. Does my opponent have any, like, spell pierces? Like, is there any soft permission I need to play around? No. There is not. So, my current question is it better for me to cast this Fiery Confluence now before my opponent, like, potentially brainstorms and looks for more counter spells? Or do I want to just, like, get in more damage via Shadow Spear? I think I want to get in the damage via Shadow Spear. I am not gonna fuck around with trying to kill Jace. I think the way I win is trying to reduce my life total to 0. I can attack this down to 2, and then my opponent pluses to 4, and just, like, the combat math doesn't work out well for me in terms of actually killing my opponent. Or, like, killing that Jace with this Spirit Guide. And there's also just so many different things that can go wrong. That is a clear example. And I can just F6 my opponent's turn. It's, like, very obvious that I do not have Pyroblast or Jace would be dead. I guess that's not true, because I could still have Bone Crusher Giant. Yeah, shit, it's Uro. Brian doesn't have the second green source yet. Still doesn't have the second green source. That's the good news. Bad news is, like, Jace has an ability called Brainstorm, and that can probably find that second green source. But Uro also means that, like, this Fiery Confluence just, like, going to the dome and ending the game is less likely. Uro also means that Chandra Awakened Inferno isn't just, like, a free roll towards Mising a win. I would be very happy with it as a draw. Very good. Okay. I hate that I have to tap Ancient Tombs to do this. I don't think I get to have the luxury of not casting cards right now. Yeah, this whole like Sylvan Library plus fetch lands thing is strong. Highly recommend it if you haven't done it before. Alright, that's the second green source. That means Uro's coming to town. Life's bad. Alright. I'm getting Fate Sealed prior to the Uro. Just make the plays with all the available information. Makes sense. Oh, that was a bottom. So presumably that was an answer to an Uro then. There it is. Okay. Well, my opponent is effectively at 18 life. I don't think I have outs. 6 damage to each opponent though. And we can pretend that there's outs. Technically, I guess if I answer the Uro next turn, my opponent isn't dead. And I don't want to get cute and like try to equip Shadow Spear on Simian Spirit Guide or anything like that. No, not more cards. Okay, that is the lethal point of damage. My opponent can just bounce Simian Spirit Guide, and then I die. Or Teferi Time Raveler bounce it, you know. Don't have to use the onboard Jace. And there's the 7 points of damage to round things out. GG's. This match was much closer than I expected it would be. You know, if I didn't mulligan into Oblivion, you know, these games would have been very, very touchy, because they were touchy as is.
For the final round here, we're going to be looking at sort of the fun level of Legacy, and we're going to be doing a Deadguy Ale versus Boros Painter matchup. Now, Deadguy Ale is a deck that maybe not everyone is familiar with. The 30-second deck tech version is that it is a white-black Stoneblade deck that leans much more heavily on the black, oftentimes trying to do something like cast a Dark Ritual into some combination of Thoughtseize, Hymn to Turok, and Dark Confidant. And it's looking to really kind of use relatively high card quality very quickly. And it's hoping that a singular card can take over the game. And Kaldra Complete really added another layer to this deck, because it makes it so that the Stoneforge Mystics can really end a game quickly and provide a very real clock.
Yeah, Kaldra really helped this deck out, because generally Deadguy gives you a lot of time, even if you're like slowly choking out over that time, and as time passes things get worse and worse for you and better for Deadguy. Like, at least it creates the illusion that it's slow and you have a chance. Like, if you have something like Terminus or Supreme Verdict or a Engineered Explosives that could kill 2 Bobs that you could still rip, like, you can feel like you're in the deck or in the game. But Kaldra's just like, nah, you're out of here. The Hymn to Turok cleared your plow on turn 1. Now you're dead. See you later.
So this is a deck that is near and dear to my heart, just because it is fun to play. Like, Deadguy Ale is not the deck that I pick up to win a tournament. It's the deck that I pick up because, like, I want to live the old glory days of like playing with like cards that I enjoy. And you know, there's something special about just going Dark Ritual, Hymn to Turok that makes me feel all the warm and fuzzies.
Yeah, this deck is a classic. Chris Pikula got second place in, I believe, the first ever Legacy Grand Prix with this deck. It was a homebrew from his team Deadguy. So I finally have the final answer straight from the horse's mouth. Chris Pikula explained this himself. There's all sorts of legends about like where the name Deadguy Ale came from. It turns out in the 90s, Chris Pikula and his friends wore t-shirts for the band Deadguy so often that Brian David Marshall just started calling those Dead Guys, and they ended up teaming together, calling their team Deadguy, because they always wore the Deadguy shirts, and Brian David Marshall was already calling them the Dead Guys. And then it turns out there was also a beer called Deadguy Ale And when Chris Piccola brewed this deck to play at that Legacy Grand Prix, he was like, oh, it's perfect, Deadguy Ale, because I brewed it, and I'm Team Deadguy. So that is the true story of where this deck name came from.
It's the greatest.
Yep,
All
that
right,
early 90s stuff. These days, this would just be called Orzhov Stoneblade.
Yep. All right, so Deadguy Ale, I think conceptually has two major problems with it that kind of keeps it from being a real contender. Number one is that it has a huge I drew the wrong side of the deck problem. You don't have cantrips in this shell to, brainstorm, put back the things that I don't need. You don't have ponders to sculpt. So, you're stuck with what you draw. And when you draw like Fatal Push and a Dam and Prismatic Ending versus, say a Doomsday deck or something, your deck looks absolutely embarrassing. And the second problem with this deck is that basically nobody plays it. And that means that people aren't iterating on it, constantly tweaking it, constantly improving it. And most of the Deadguy Ale content that's out there is, well, mine. So there's so many different ways you can play this deck. You can adjust with Bitter Blossoms, you can do Sedgemoor Witch and, throw an infinite combo into the deck. If you're playing this deck, you kind of have to say, like, this is the pile of cards that I want to play, figure out your reasoning for why you want to do that, and, click submit and hope it works out.
Yeah, that I talk about that every time I play a non-blue deck. Like, it's the Maverick problem, it's the Elves problem. Like, there is no brainstorm coming, and at least with a deck like Elves, everything is working in the same direction, and you just draw more of it, and eventually you'll hit a payoff, but having just wrong cards you can draw with like you said, the Fatal Push versus combo, or like the Thoughtseize versus Madness, like those sort of things are just, they're not great. But this deck does a really good job on raw power. Like Hymn to Turok is just a card that used to define Legacy. Like there's been multiple eras where Hymn to Turok was just defining Legacy, and then it would fade out for one reason or another, and then it would come back to redefine Legacy again. And currently, Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, is keeping Hymn to Turok down, but you don't need to worry about that in this matchup.
Yeah. Kind of last thing that I want to say about this deck is that because the deck has a heavy black skew and it wants to have black on turn 2 very consistently, I'm lighter on the wastelands and things like basic planes and additional white flex cards than I normally would be. I don't know that I have everything figured out perfectly here, and in fact, I probably don't. But you'll notice some weird numbers here, like a 2-2 split on Swords of Plowshares versus Prismatic Ending. This is me kind of just going with my gut and saying something like this is probably a good split, but it's possible that, these numbers need to be adjusted still.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about it, but Dauthi Voidwalker is a pretty significant upgrade to a deck that hasn't gotten a lot of significant upgrades in a long time. Like Cauldron Complete is one of them that we mentioned, but Dauthi Voidwalker, and specifically in the matchup that we're about to play, I'm worried about this card.
Well, why don't we talk about your deck and then we'll talk about the matchup.
All right. I am playing mostly Boros Painter. This is a deck that I played on the channel a week, 2 weeks ago at this point, by the time you're seeing this, and this was a donation deck from a subscriber named Undyne, and they sent me a Mardu deck, and after playing the league, I realized the black didn't do much and the white was really good. So I just sort of recrejiggered the deck into this configuration that there's still a small black splash. Like I could still kick the Nile Spellbomb, and there's still one Plague Engineer in the sideboard that probably won't come in this matchup. And I can still cast them off Mox Opal and Chromatic Star, but this is basically Boros. The core of the deck is Painter Grindstone. So turn everything the same color, put your opponent's deck into the graveyard. That's one of the combos. You have all 8 Goblin Welders to make it happen. Like actual Goblin Welder and Goblin Engineer. Then Karn can wish for Painter or Grindstone, and Karn can also shut down equipment, which is important for this matchup. Deck explodes pretty hard with Lion's Eye Diamond. It's a Saga deck as well, so it has a grind plan, a secondary grind plan, LOL. And the card that really impressed me when I played this league the first time was Auriok Salvagers. It was a one of in the original Mardu list, and I added a second copy because it was just doing work. I think I won as many games with that one of Salvager as I did with every other combo combined over the course of 5 matches. And adding another one just seems like that's an angle that I'm interested in exploring.
Oh yeah, that's super spooky to me.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing, like, Fatal Push is going to have a hard time hitting Salvagers. Like, you do need to leave up a fetch land or be able to get rid of something at instant speed in order to push the Salvagers. And Prismatic Ending's not going to hit this thing out of your 2-color deck. You have that Ending and Plow split where the whole way up the curve, Ending is better against my deck than Plow, basically on every single option, until we hit Auriok Salvagers at the top of the curve, and then you just wish you had 4 Plows. I think on average, you're going to be happier with the split, but Salvagers is this type of thing that once you test their answers the whole way up the curve, it's just like, bang, can't get bolted, can't get Fatal Pushed, can't get Abrupt Decayed, here's this thing, good luck. However, the concern that I have is Dauthi Voidwalker shuts off the Salvager combo, shuts off any sort of welder shenanigans, and shuts off my Crucible. Like, that one card is tough, and the 1-2 punch of like Dark Ritual, because you know I don't have counter spells. Like, you can Dark Ritual, cast Dauthi Voidwalker, then Thoughtseize me, and take something like Karn and just cast it right away. And my deck can't beat Karn. So just Dauthi Voidwalker does everything in this matchup that you would want out of a single card. And I'm a little worried about it. But I do have the Shotgun Blast potential of just Painter grinding you. And you have a couple instant speed spells and a bunch of discard. But if you don't have the Voidwalker, my welders can loop the things that you've discarded given enough time. I could just turn 1 or turn 2 you. You don't have a lot of answers to things that are already in play. So if I have a fast turn 1 where I cast the Painter and the Grindstone, then pass the turn and kill you on the untap, you're going to have a hard time interacting with that. So there is a lot of tension here. And it will depend on, I think play draw is going to be huge. Like, do you get to cast your discard spell before I put some stuff into play? And the sideboards are going to matter a lot too.
I think this is going to be both the most skill-intensive match that we played today and the longest.
There's a good chance of that.
Like, both of us have the ability to grind, and both of us attack from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, and there's a lot of toys in this deck, and there's a lot of toys in your deck too, and you're an artifact deck as well. Like, Goblin Welder exchanges artifacts in play and into the graveyard. It doesn't, as long as they're controlled by the same player, it doesn't care. Like, I could turn your Cauldra into an Ubazawa's Jitte mid-combat to make sure like I don't get hit by the Germ, and then I can turn Jitte into Cauldra next turn to make sure that you never get counters. And like, I could tread water with that Fog, Ensnaring Bridge. You don't have 3 colors of mana in your deck to exile this thing, so that could be a banger. Karn's a banger. Like, my top end I think is better than yours, but your disruption is better than mine getting up to the top end. You're clocking as well. Like, I have my combo, which is also a clock, but your steady damage is going to add up. Like, I am an Ancient Tomb deck on top of everything else that's going on, so this is going to be pretty dynamic. I think we could play 5 matches with these 2 decks and they'd all look different.
I agree with that. Can we take a look at my sideboard real quick?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so I have some absolute bangers in my sideboard, most notably Serenity. This is a card that I was playing because like this deck got absolutely clowned on by the Affinity deck, and it kind of has problems with Urza's Saga construct tokens in particular. So Serenity was the answer that I chose to that. Pithing Needle is something else that I have played in the past as well. But generally speaking, I think sideboarding is going to be very difficult for me because I have so many good options. But minus the Plague Engineer, it would be reasonable to bring in all of the various cards that are in my sideboard. So I am going to have to pick a lane. Like, am I going to shut off your combo potential? Am I going to try to really hate on the graveyard with surgicals? Do I want to play more of a board controlling? We're going to have to see how the matchup feels. But I think sideboarding is going to be exceptionally difficult for me. Sudden Edict is also just like an absolute lol way to disrupt the like, oh, I feel like I've got this. I've got Painter with, a Pyroblast backup, and then it doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't envy your decisions you're gonna have to make. Like you said, there's so many cards that come in, but like, are you cutting Dark Confidants at some point? Like, do you like every card in your main deck has a job, and there's not a lot of fat to trim. So you can't bring in 10 cards, much less 14. You probably can't even bring in 7 cards. But I guess we'll see what you end up doing. Like you are going to have to play it by ear and see how it looks.
Yeah, this is one of those times where I'm just gonna like Yu-Gi-Oh! Heart of the cards, see where the feel takes me. I don't think this is one of those times where you can sit down and like really figure everything out prior to the match actually happening.
Yeah, I agree with that. And same, even if on my side of the matchup, even if I decide on what macro plan I like the most, of like I am gonna maneuver towards Painter Grindstone at all points, or I am gonna push for the salvager combo at the top end. Like, I don't get to make those calls. I have to look at my opening 7 and decide where it wants to take me, and that is what it is, which is great because you can't level me. Like, you can't read my soul and know that, okay, he's going in on Pain or Grindstone, I'm just going to make sure I can disrupt that, because I don't know what I'm doing. Like, if you can predict what I'm doing and metagame me, then you know what I'm doing better than I do.
All right, so chips on the table. Who's taking down this round?
I am going to bet on so I'm going to say it's me, with the wild card being Dothy Voidwalker. I think if you stick Dothy Voidwalker early and often, you will make a laugher out of this round. If this card is not forthcoming, and like we talked about, you don't have cantrips, if it's not in your hand, then you don't get it, period. I think I can grind and dance around every other card in this 75 except Dothy Voidwalker, which requires the specific answers while shutting out multiple lines. Everything else does like one or the other. That's what I think is going to happen here.
All right. I think I'm going to take this one down. I think Douthie Voidwalker is very strong, and we haven't talked about Kaya, but Kaya is a beating against this deck because it can both exile cards from the graveyard and also take out like the smaller things in play like Grindstone that matter, and it's also just a win condition, and you don't pressure Planeswalkers very well.
Yeah, Kaya is definitely a beast in this matchup.
All right, well, let's get into it and see how it goes.
All right, good luck in the final round.
All right, third and final round. This will be Deadguy Ale versus Painter, and I have won the die roll. Okay. I have a Douthie Voidwalker. I believe that means that this is just a keep. I think that card is just so very powerful in the matchup. Brian talked about being quite scared of that card. We're not super great versus interacting against things that are in play here. Also, let me do a quick check. I don't think my opponent had any Blood Moon effects. Not in game 1, not in the post-sideboard games. No Wastelands. So I am good with just playing a Marsh Flats and passing the turn, and intending on getting a Scrubland. Ryan's probably over there going like, does he have it? Does he fucking have it? My rogue brother. We're gonna do some work. Alright. Gonna cycle immediate. Oh, a Spellbomb. Spellbomb blows up Douthie Voidwalker. Ryan, that's a lot of cards. Relax a little bit, bud. Alright. Let's grab Scrubland. Dark Ritual's good. We'll have 4 mana this turn. And Dark Ritual, Prismatic Ending away the Pirate Spellbomb. And then play the Douthie Voidwalker, and that sets me up for ignoring a lot of the grind. Alternatively, I can do a lot of other different things. I guess I have to respect the combo portion of the deck. I could go like Dark Ritual, Lily, plus discard a land, cast Prismatic Ending on the Spellbomb, and then I probably can't... Well, it becomes harder for me to die. The Lily-based lines might actually be better than anything else here. I could also keep my land and get rid of Dark Confidant. Holy hell, this turn is hard to play. I'm always doing that. Plus Lily plus. Prismatic Vista versus Dark Confidant. I think it's Prismatic Vista. Alright, there's a Goblin Engineer. Now, do I want to take out the Lion's Eye Diamond? Because that's the thing that allows my opponent to potentially just like combo off immediately. I don't think so. I think I just really want this Spellbomb off the table. Like, Douthie, Voidwalker, and Dark Confidant are both answered by it. So, if my opponent has both Painter and Grindstone available, my opponent can kill me. It's just like Ancient Tomb, Painter, Mox Opal, Grindstone, activate LED, I die. But outside of that, I have a lot of the grindier things covered. Yeah, I'm good with Ensnaring Bridge. Oh, what a fucking draw. Holy hell. Dark Ritual. Douthie Voidwalker. Dark Confidant. Plus. And a Mountain. This game is going to go on for a while. But I'm pretty heavily in the driver's seat here. Nice. I will play a Douthie Voidwalker. Plus Lily. I know I'm like technically dying to my own Bob here, but I'm not too worried about that in the grand scheme of things. So at some point I will just, you know, Lily ultimate and then like get rid of the Ensnaring Bridge, and life is good. My opponent does have a Chromatic Star that they can crack at some point. Ooh, the nuisance. Thank you, Bob. Wasteland, the Urza Saga, which I will now be able to play. Not this turn, though. Alright, that is a Grindstone. I think I want to keep my Liliana around. I'm going to go ahead and plus one more time. We'll call that a turn. Then next turn I can ultimate Lily, go Ensnaring Bridge versus the rest, and see what my opponent does. Oh, they're still not cracking the Chromatic Star. Goblin Welder, sure. I would like to draw an answer to that, because otherwise it makes my Liliana ultimate a little awkward. Okay, yeah, there we go. All Swords to Plowshares, the Welder. Target you. We'll just go Ensnaring Bridge versus. Yep. Ryan understandably gets rid of the Ensnaring Bridge. I will attack him for half his life total. We'll see if this is the turn where the Chromatic Star gets cracked, because we're looking at a lethal swing the following turn. Damn it, Brian! No! We're gonna let it happen. Anything could happen here. Alright, no life lost to Bob. Alright, GG's. I suppose I could have, like, split Ensnaring Bridge and, like, Grindstone or something. Yeah, there were other ways to split that. But I just, like, really wanted that Ensnaring Bridge out of play, because I'm very bad at answering it. I can't Prismatic Ending for 3, so, like, it's Liliana Ultimate to take it out of play. Or, like, I have to get something from my opponent's deck to do it. Alright. I 100% want Kaya's and Serenities. I don't want Dam. I don't know that I need Savine's Reclamation. My opponent's not going to answer my stuff most of the time. Necromentia, so that I never have to, like, worry about being comboed off, is pretty gross. Although I guess, because Auriok Salvagers exists, there's still technically another combo in the deck. Like, Lion's Eye Diamond plus Pyrite Spellbomb plus LED still kills me. So I don't want to play Dam, I don't think. I think I want this stuff. I don't know, like I said in the deck tech, like this part's hard. I can probably go down on some amount of discard, especially on the draw. Hymns can be a little risky on the draw, I think. What happens if I cut hymns? Does that give me 5? Gives me 6. After I cut the dams as well. So then I can start looking at like sudden edicts. Do I want another? Do I want to go down to Thoughtseize even? Sure. No, maybe I do like this. Something like this is probably okay. This hand is of medium quality. The early Stoneforge Cauldron thing is pretty cool. I have a prismatic ending that can interact with my opponent as well as a wasteland. This is not an ideal hand, but I think despite the fact that this has 5 lands, this hand is good enough that I want to play it. Not the crazy like Dark Ritual do everything hand, but it's pretty good. I think I'm about 50% to just cast Stoneforge Mystic, and 50% to just prismatic ending my opponent's first play, and then play Wasteland as well. Alright, let's grab a Scrubland. Oh yeah. So goodbye Welder, and goodbye Great Furnace. And then I will have like Stoneforge Mystic and Necromentia as things to do as follow-ups. That's pretty good. Alright. What do you have for me? Grim Monolith, sure. Yep. There is a possibility I die this turn. Goblin Engineer, okay. My Necromentia may end up being 1 turn too slow. Oh no. I might be 1 mana short of just winning this game with Necromentia. I have so many outs here. Thematic ending will work. Okay, so the question is like, what do I answer? The Painter Servant or the Goblin Engineer? I think I answer the Goblin Engineer, because 1 Grindstone is already out of the deck, and another is probably in the sideboard for the Karn package. I guess the same is true of Painter Servant. Yeah, I think I answer the Goblin Engineer here. The reason not to answer Goblin Engineer specifically is like a red Elemental Blast countering my Necromentia next turn. The Engineer represents so much value right now. Alright, white, black, 2 different colors, done. Okay, I'm pretty happy to see a land, unless the next card is Karn, in which case I am quite unhappy. Ooh, Auriok Salvagers. Returns the Grindstone to hand. Oh no, that's just a win. So with the Lion's Eye Diamond, my opponent can then get the infinite mana and then do the Grindstone thing. So I am dead this turn. What a hell of a top deck. GG's.
We're back in the booth, and we're done. We did it.
Yeah, that was a blast. I really enjoyed playing those games, and I think we put on a high-level show for the viewers.
I think so. All of them were close. All of them were pretty close to our predictions, actually. We'll start with the 8-Walla deck, Hollowvine, whatever we're calling that deck. You killed me for Xaxes on the turn that I stabilized.
Yep.
If I drew True Name Nemesis 1 turn before, I did. If I just drew those 2 cards, like True Name and then Wasteland in the opposite order, I probably win that game. And just cheesed in there for Xaxes, and you easily won game 1. I did what I needed to do game 2, and then you just got over the finish line in game 3, and that's basically what we predicted the matchup would look like.
Yeah, that matchup was really cool, and I did something that I haven't done very many times, and I actually used LED as a bait spell at one point in that match so that I could successfully end up putting a Vengevine into play.
Did I fall for it?
Yeah.
All right. I believe that on my side during the commentary, I mean, that was 3 hours ago at the point of recording now, but I'm pretty sure at every turn 1, I was saying, if he has 2 things, I'm dead. Because that's something we didn't really talk about in the original deck tech, where I said it's my job to force the will the first thing that goes on the stack. We didn't talk about if you have 2 things. Like every time I forced a Burning Inquiry, I was like, oh god, this is bait. LED's coming. And it never really did, but there was a lot of tension there, for sure. You managed to thread the needle. And honestly, from playing the matchup, it feels a lot worse than I thought it did on paper. I hadn't actually played that matchup myself. I had seen it played. I'm familiar with both decks, but that felt like I was way farther behind than it would appear on paper in reality.
Yeah, I also had more opportunities to get back into the game than I expected. There was one of the games where like you stuck a Ragavan, you countered my first thing, and I was like, well, okay, I'm dead. And then I think I won that game 5 turns later or something like that.
I was talking about that. I actually boarded all but one Ragavan out in games 2 and 3 because you have just infinite free X1s. Ragavan's not doing anything. It's basically on chump block duty for Vengevine. Like, I'm just trying to tread water. That deck is really bad at winning the game in any sort of fast order. You definitely are settled in. You grind into top deck mode, and then you just bet that your Urza Sagas and Ragavans and things like that, your individual cards that generate multiple threats, will be worth more than your opponent's top deck. But when your opponent's top decks also bring back Vengevine, it's just always shitty.
It's like having a weird little bit of reach just sitting in the graveyard that you always just have to be thinking about.
Yep. And in our game one, you had a Burning Inquiry, while my hand was Plow, Ending, and your Inquiry let me keep my 2 endings, but took the Plow, and it dumped Vengevine for you. And if that just happens in the other direction, like, I Plow Vengevine, and it was just so close in so many different ways, and that was just a really exciting dynamic matchup of Magic.
Oh man, the burning inquiries are scary. So like, one of the burning inquiries I cast, I had double hollow one in hand, and I'm like, I can either instantly win or instantly lose the game on the spot, depending on how this goes.
I definitely did a victory lap when one of your inquiries discarded it was like land LED hollow one. I was like, yes, that's not what he wanted at all. We need those. What about
Right.
Bant versus Red?
So I mulled into oblivion that round.
You sure did.
That's the sort of thing that happens with that. But despite that, I was on your butt the whole game. Like, those games were still scary for you, I imagine.
Yeah, the game one, we talked a lot about how Chalice doesn't blank control anymore. And while that is true, it's you don't get just game locked out, game set match because you had a turn one Chalice. But there are certainly draws where Chalice is bad. In our game one, you had turn one Chalice. I had turn two Sylvan Library. I had an Ice Fang Coatl. I saw like 7 or 8 extra cards that game. And my hand at the end of the game was like Plow, Ponder, Brainstorm, Endurance. And your Chalice just shut it down. I never lose that game if there's not a Chalice in play, but there was. And then when you boarded them out and I get more control over the game, I think game 2 was close and game 3 wasn't. The one where you mulled to 4, my hand was just rolled up. It was like Forest, Plow, Ice Fang, Coatl, Uro. I was just ready. But yeah, our game 2 was really close, and game 1 came down to, can I find Terminus or Prismatic Ending off of the Sylvan Library before I'm dead?
There were a surprising number of decision points on my end, despite the fact that I didn't have very many things to work with. So for example, I put a Fury under a Chrome Mox to play around the Ice Fang Coatl that could flash in mid-combat and like be one of your best outs to the current board. There were some things like that were really cool on my end.
Yeah, I remember that turn happening, and you tutored up that Chrome Mox with Saga. I was like, okay, what could he do for 2 mana? And I was like, well, here's my Coatl. It's the only play I have. Yep, got stomped. I am shocked and surprised. Then I died on the next turn. I forgot to even mention Dress Down. Like, I had a Sylvan Library trigger that was looking for Terminus, Prismatic Ending, or Dress Down, and just missed on all 3. You even had the Haste creature to deny the next round. I paid for just to get a card deeper into the deck for the next Sylvan Library. I was like, 2 and 6 are the same in this deck. Like, I need cards right now, and had the Haste creature to punish. Like, that was a really exciting game too.
Match 3 rather. It was a little weird that game 1.
Yeah, I had the early Ensnaring Bridge, which your deck only has 1 out to, and it's Kaya. We got into the position where you could ultimate your Liliana, and you had double Dothy Voidwalker, so most of my combos were off, most of my cards were off, Grindstone in play, and in my head, I was thinking, do I just grind you twice to put 4 cards in your graveyard, and then let us go to decking, and just hope that I hit Kaya on those mills, and just always choose to keep Ensnaring Bridge no matter how many times you ultimate Liliana? I decided to bet on the deck instead, and keep all my other permanents when you ultimated Liliana. Obviously just ripped the Painter Servant immediately and killed you. I think 2 draw steps to do that.
Yeah, you had the 1 draw step there, and then you had a chromatic star in play that you could crack for another look?
I couldn't because you had Voidwalker, and that's when it dies.
Oh shoot! I didn't even
Yeah,
realize that. I thought you had an extra draw.
No, Chromatic Sphere gets around that. Chromatic Star actually has to die.
All right. Well, today I learned.
Yep. Luckily, I did actually recognize that immediately, which is lucky because I would normally miss that until it's too late. But I did not commit one of my onboard resources to not draw a card. I did see it right away.
I wasn't sure how much I could greed on the Liliana Ultimate pile and still have you get rid of the Ensnaring Bridge. And so I decided just not to risk it at all.
I was talking about your possible piles for like 2 or 3 turns leading as she just ticked up. I was like, the safest thing he can do is just everything and bridge, and I might still keep bridge. I think if you had left me with any material at all in the bridge pile, I would have kept the bridge pile. Like if you separated Grindstone from the bridge, I'd probably keep the bridge pile. But yeah, I think you were right to just put me to the test.
I had to plus my Liliana up to 7 before just ultimating because like I have 2 Lilianas and 1 Kaya that are basically my only ways to win, other than like finding your Karn or something like that off a Douthie Voidwalker. But like basically I needed to keep that Liliana around, and that was unfortunately giving you more and more turns to just find a painter.
Yeah, I actually didn't even consider the fact that if I committed to that just keep bridge always line and hope you don't draw Kaya, or hope that, well, you're obviously going to draw her eventually, but hope you don't find her in time or that I mill her first. I wasn't even thinking about the fact that we'll eventually draw the Karn that I can't cast because I have no permanence, and you get to get it with Douthie Voidwalker. Then you can animate my bridge and plow it. Like, you had many more outs there than I originally thought. So I'm glad I didn't do the stupid bet on Ensnaring Bridge thing. Just bet on the top deck instead.
Yeah, and then in the final game of that match, I had kind of an interesting decision of whether or not I'm supposed to get rid of the painter or whether or not I'm supposed to get rid of the engineer. I decided to get rid of the engineer because, like, if I don't end up closing the game quickly, that thing being around is a nuisance and allows you to jump through so many things that I'm otherwise doing. And I did not take into account the Auriok Salvagers being a top deck that just killed me.
Honestly, I forgot that Grindstone was a 1-drop until that was happening. Like, if you watch my side of the video, I'm like, oh, Salvagers, I can make infinite mana, cast Gigantha, and then I'm way ahead on board. And then when I clicked on the Salvagers to pick up the LED the first time, Moto highlighted the Grindstone. I was like, oh, he's just dead. Got there. Yeah, Salvagers. We did talk a lot about Salvagers being a scary card in the deck, in the matchup, just hard to remove, thick AF, a value machine, and luckily, there it was.
Yeah, but that was an excellent set of exhibition matches, in my opinion. You know, we played very well. If I allow myself to pat us on the back here. And I think the matches we decided to show off ended up being really interesting in very different ways.
I think so too. This is a good showcase of the format. I didn't make any egregious punts that I'm usually good for 1 or 2 over the course of 5 matches, so it seems like 3 matches is my sweet spot. Or I was just taking it more seriously. Hard to say. Thank you to our Patreons and our Discords who organized this thing. Wouldn't have done this without community input, and it was definitely fun to do.
Thanks for having me on, and I was happy to have you on, because we kind of do this whole two-way street thing here. If you are watching on my channel, check out BoshNRoll for his side of the matches, and if you are watching on Brian's channel, I am ThrabenU if you want to see how things played out on my end.
Yep, all of Phil's links and my links will be in my video description, and I'm sure mine will be in his. Make sure to like and subscribe to both channels, and check out the Patreon, check out the YouTube memberships, check out our podcast, The Eternal Glory. All of those links are in the video description as well. Thanks for watching.
See ya.